Welcome, everybody, to episode 209 of WordPress Weekly for Wednesday, October 7th, 2015. I'm your host, Jeff Chandler, joined by Marcus Couch. Marcus, what's up, my main man?
Hey, had a great week so far. A lot of cool WordPress stuff going on, and looking forward to this episode as I look forward to every Wednesday night. Got a great show ahead of us.
Absolutely. And speaking of our guests, we have a special guest on tonight. Every one of our guests are special. Maybe Drew might be a little more special in some ways that maybe we'll get into later on in the show. But Drew Jaynes, some of you may know him, some of you don't. But if you don't, he got to start building websites at the age of 16. Boy, what a youngin'. Learning just enough HTML to build a tournament portal for his online gaming league. And since 2010, he's worked as a full-time WordPress developer and as an occasional student mentor. He led the release of WordPress 4.2 and largely contributes to the documentation efforts surrounding WordPress. And the last time we had Drew on, I think, was back in April, when I think it was just before or after the release of WordPress 4.2. And Drew, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I think if you're on 2 times in a year, I think that makes you a friend of the show.
Thank you.
So I guess I should start off by saying, do you feel like, are you relieved yet do you feel rested since your tour of duty of leading a release of WordPress?
Oh, absolutely. I basically took off the 4.3 release in terms of core development. So that's why you've seen such a burst of energy come out in 4.4, because I basically took a release off.
Awesome. I'm sure it was well deserved, by the way. So let's talk about the first thing I want to talk about is your trip. You actually attended WordCamp Cape Town, Africa, and I enjoyed watching your Twitter stream of all the cool photos from your trip. I just want you to describe what it is you talked about at WordCamp Cape Town, and just sort of describe your trip. I mean, did you have a good time? Tell us a little bit about that area.
It was an awesome trip. It was a really long way from Denver to Cape Town, South Africa. But
yeah, how long does that take?
Is that like 32-hour flight or something? How many?
Well, it was with layovers and everything, it was like 35 hours one direction.
Oh my God!
But it was amazing. It was an amazing WordCamp to go to. And I actually talked about 2 different things. I had 2 talks, which is the first time I've ever done that. The first day I gave a workshop on advanced queries, and then the second day I gave a talk on the inner workings of WordPress core releases.
And that's a topic you actually have some experience in.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to have experience in things you talk about.
And what was the turnout of the event?
I think they had, I don't remember the exact figures. I think it was about 275 or 300 people. It was a pretty good sized camp, and it was really neat to get an opportunity to finally meet a lot of people there. Sort of like what happened at WordCamp Europe. I finally got to meet a lot of European WordPressers. And in this case, there were a lot of people in South Africa that I wanted to meet, so that was really good.
And I think this was their second year. I know they had an event down there last year. Do you know if this was their second year, consecutive year doing a WordCamp?
Consecutive years, I'm not sure. I think their first WordCamp was actually like in 2008. And that was run by Ashley Shaw, and I don't know if it's consecutive or what. I think this is the second one that Hugh is organized. That's right.
So overall, quality event, how would you rate it? How would you review the organization of it and just the event itself in terms of all the other WordCamps you've been to?
Well, I don't want to compare. I think it was an extremely well organized WordCamp. It was at a golf club, right? So, like the middle of the second day, they invited everyone out to the driving range, to shoot some balls. It was awesome. Like, it was in this totally cool venue, perfect for the size of the group. And they have these amazing MCs. I don't know if you know about this, but they have this like comedy duo that MCs WordCamp there. And it's awesome. It's like maybe the only WordCamp I've ever been to where they had something like that.
Wow, that's interesting. I've heard of the idea of other WordCamps possibly having dedicated MCs, or at least the people who volunteer to help out with the WordCamp maybe work on MC skills. But it's cool to hear that they actually had two people dedicated to that task at WordCamp Cape Town.
Yeah, I think that's the second or third year they've done it, and it's a tradition at this point. But it was really cool. I thought it was a really unique way to sort of keep everybody interested.
So it's like, hey, let's talk WordPress, and while we're doing it, let's smack the hell out of some golf balls.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, it was just a really cool venue, and it was an interesting opportunity to do something different. I think we had the after party there as well, so it was just a really versatile venue. I really liked that.
Did you happen to see Mendel Kurland from GoDaddy? Was he there?
Probably. I don't know.
He's everywhere.
I met a lot of people at that WordCamp, but yeah,
it's more of a joke actually, because it seems like every WordCamp picture has Mendel in it.
So were you able to get a sense of the vibe of the WordPress community there at WordCamp Cape Town? Were most of the attendees and possibly speakers local, do you know of?
I think it was skewed local, as most WordCamps like to do. I found it interesting that they managed to draw so many international speakers. Like, this is the second or third year in a row they've done international speakers. I mean, obviously I came a long way to speak, but I think it was they have a vibrant community there. Obviously Obox and WooThemes are in Cape Town, so they have that as a sort of linchpin, and then they have a pretty active WordPress meetup. I think maybe one or two different active WordPress meetups. So they have a vibrant community there. So honestly, it was a really, really cool opportunity to see a completely different place, right? Africa was a new continent for me, so that's a bonus.
So I'm sure some of the people that attended had, relatively the same kind of starter questions or startup questions that you see at a lot of other WordCamps. But what, if anything, caught your eye in terms of a culture shift in how they do things there versus some of the WordCamps here in the U.S.?
That's a tough question. I did find it interesting that they had like almost a 50-50 split, developers to users, which is unusual. If you go to some of these bigger camps, and it's almost inevitable that they'll have more developers, like WordCamp San Francisco, for instance, or now WordCamp US. I think it's I don't know that I noticed anything necessarily culturally different. I did notice that they don't seem to have a lot of exposure to the core team there. Because there's not really a lot of people there who are regular contributors. Obviously, I don't want to be stomping on somebody if there are regular contributors there. I mean, it seemed like by and large, they don't necessarily have a lot of exposure to the core team there, or to some of the larger contributor teams. So I thought that was a really great opportunity to sort of expand the contributor base there.
And I imagine that was maybe some of your motivation going in to discuss the inner workings of core?
Yeah, I really wanted to stress that. I mean, the talk that I gave about releases was literally called "It Takes a Village to Build WordPress," right? And that was really to try to highlight not just how releases work, but also point out that there are 6 or 8 different contributor teams working in tandem to make a release happen. And so I wanted to kind of point out that, yeah, you can contribute to core, but you can also contribute to all these other teams and have an active part in a release. And that's the thing, is I think a lot of people just have this misconception that releases are handled entirely by the core team, which is not even close to being true. So.
And if anything, I mean, what's your biggest takeaway from an event like that in terms of the global exposure of WordPress and the growth of WordPress? I mean, did it seem like perhaps that people that wouldn't typically fit the WordPress mold, so to speak, in terms of demographics, were in attendance? I mean, did you see anybody completely out of character?
No, I think it was pretty. It was pretty. I don't know. I think it was pretty much the same kind of makeup as any other work
Yeah.
camp I've ever been to.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like it was. You had the one thing I liked a lot was I saw a lot of overlap. Right, I saw a lot of users coming into the developer room and developers going into the users room, which is always nice. Especially when you have dedicated tracks. I think this is the first time they ever did a 2-day camp. So that was kind of an interesting experiment. I think it went extremely well.
And here's the question that everybody else is going to ask. What kind of food did they have there?
The food was really good.
Yeah?
They had, it was catered in through the club, I think. But
Yeah.
they had a really good spread both days. And this is kind of a cultural thing, but they have like dedicated tea times during obviously not tea time as in like golf club tea time, but like tea time.
The liquid.
They have like a tea break in the morning and a tea break in the afternoon, which was new for me. And I actually got in the habit of drinking tea. In fact, now I drink tea.
So we're off on
because they totally got me hooked. So after 2 days of work camp and hanging out with a coworker of mine, Brent Van Rensburg, because I stayed for a couple extra days, I got in the habit of drinking tea, and now I drink tea. So I found that to be kind of an interesting cultural change from most work camps that I go to. But then again, most work camps I go to in the U.S. and tea isn't really a thing. So
that's interesting and sort of signifies the European connection because at WordCamp Europe, they also had dedicated tea times built into the event.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, but yeah, they totally got me hooked on tea, so that was interesting.
So are you continuing the routine? I mean, did you have a tea break today?
I didn't have a tea break, but I did drink tea this afternoon. I don't take a dedicated tea break. I just keep working.
It's 3 p.m. Stop whatever I'm doing. Time for tea.
That's right.
Awesome. I'm glad you had a great time. Oh, go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, a couple. I thought of something just as I was thinking to myself about a week ago. There were like 4 WordCamps going on at once. There was Tampa, there was the Netherlands, there was Los Angeles. I think there was Rhode Island had theirs as well. I'd like to get to the point where, sometimes in the movie theater they have like special showings of live stuff or whatever, or there's a concert you can see live or something. And then you've got a lot of the tele experience with universities and things where you have satellite schools where they just gather in an auditorium and there's a lecture going on, and then you can just step up to the camera if you want to ask a question. I wonder if we're ever going to get to that point in WordCamp where we can have like 5 or 6 rooms somewhere and be part of the audience of watching this particular talk, and then just jump right up to the camera no matter where you are and ask that question. I think that would be a lot safer than just allowing people with their webcams that watch the stream. But I think we're getting to that point. I think we're getting to that point where we might be able to pull something like that off, where a satellite city that's not part of a WordCamp at that particular week can sit in on 5 or 6 different WordCamp sessions throughout the day. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically an online WordCamp is what we're talking about, which I think would be kind of a neat thing to do. I don't know, somebody do a WordCamp,
but still have an audience that's there in the room of 30 or 40 people that watch that particular session, even though they're satellite, because then you still get the networking opportunities. It's not like you're sitting at home watching a stream.
Yeah, you should talk to Brian Richards about that. Get WP Sessions to do that, and then we'll see. Then we'll talk.
All right.
In an odd sort of way, I can see that this sort of already happens with WordCamp San Francisco with the live stream, where people all over the world, their various meetup groups, they actually using a projector or something else, they have watch parties.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But I mean, that's mostly for the big annual conference, which is WordCamp Well, it was WordCamp San Francisco. Now it's going to be WordCamp US.
Yeah.
But they don't usually do watch parties for any other WordCamp event.
But can
Well,
you imagine if 4 WordCamps are going on in the same weekend? You could just go to like 4 different rooms and okay, I'm watching the Netherlands. Now I'm going over here to watch Tampa.
well, I think once we get to the point where everyone's live streaming, then maybe, it's,
Yeah.
and honestly, the 4 different WordCamps in the week, in the same day or the same weekend or whatever, is not uncommon in what would be considered WordCamp season, whatever that means, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think WordCamp Denver was June 15th, and I think there were 3 other WordCamps that weekend.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's
Really,
impossible to consume it all.
yeah.
I mean, really, but more and more, I am not able to travel just because of career restrictions, and it seems like, I know that when we talked to Andrea Middleton, she told us that that was kind of the goal in terms of a lot of the WordCamps to be able to live stream everything. Now, I haven't seen that yet, but I sure would like to.
Well, usually that's a limitation of bandwidth or equipment, right?
Or logistics or price for
Yeah, I
that
mean,
equipment.
It's not even necessarily not wanting to do it; it's not being able to,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
or doing it and then doing it kind of poorly, which in some cases is worse than watching it.
Yeah. Well, we always have Periscope and things like that we could do
Yeah.
in the meantime.
So, Drew, you led the release of WordPress 4.2, and right now Scott Taylor is sort of in the middle. I think we've got 2 weeks to go before Beta 1 of WordPress 4.4, and Scott Taylor is a man on fire. He is lighting up track. He is committing tickets left and right, along with the volunteer core committers to WordPress. The track gardeners are going crazy, and he's rocking and rolling. I mean, this guy is just doing a lot of work involved with WordPress out of the gate, and I just wanted to know from prior release lead, just your thoughts on sort of his take or sort of his priority level, or just your opinion on what you've seen so far out of Scott Taylor's way of managing the release cycle.
Well, I think he's done an amazing job maintaining momentum, right? Which is kind of the problem in most releases. The interesting thing is, so just to throw out a stat here, I think in the last 4 or 5 releases we've averaged 600 tickets in the entire release, right? In this release, we've already closed 500 and something tickets, and we're 2 weeks from Beta 1. That's insane.
And there's been over 1,000 commits, which means code or bug fixes that have been added to WordPress.
That's right.
Or most of them probably have been added to WordPress.
Right. We'd already closed 500 tickets before we merged a single feature. That's crazy. We've fixed so many bugs. Christy Burka, Scribu. For a while there, I was thinking that Scott was just finding all of Scribu's old open tickets and closing them all, and that's really, in a lot of ways, not really that far off. We've fixed a lot of Scribu tickets already this release.
And when we talk about Scribu tickets, he was a very active contributor to WordPress way back in the day, 7 or 8 years ago.
Well, yeah, and he was active up until a couple of years ago. So he's the author of the Post-to-Post plugin. He was the maintainer of WPCLI before Daniel Bachler, all those things. So, but honestly, a lot of the work we've been doing is sort of, I guess a good parallel would be the 3.7 release that Andrew Nason led. It was a maintenance release that was run alongside the 3.8 release.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what happened here, is that we fixed a lot of bugs and fixed a lot of kind of really annoying things that have been sticking around for years. But we did it at the front end of the release, so it's kind of exciting. We managed to fix all this really cool stuff, and now we just merged most of the features, in the last week or so.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited, and it looks to me, not to put down any one release or whatever, just based on my own opinion here, WordPress 4.4 looks to be one of the most exciting WordPress releases in a long time, just because of the amount of bugs fixed and the amount of instrumental things that have been merged in the core. So one of those things I want to talk about with you is a lot of devs are really happy about this. It's called taxonomy meta or taxonomy meta
Term
terms.
meta, yeah.
Yes.
I don't. We have a lot of listeners to the show who may just saying the word taxonomy in relation to WordPress may go over their head. So, I don't want to spend an entire hour on this, but can you give us a sort of on the surface explanation as to what it is, and B, why devs are so happy about it, and then C, why this is beneficial to end users?
Well, okay, so term meta is essentially, if you're familiar with post meta, that is to say custom fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
Term meta is to terms what post meta is to posts. It's essentially, up until 4.4, we didn't have term meta, which meant that taxonomy terms that, like tags or categories or some custom taxonomy terms, could only have basically 3 pieces of data associated with them. There's a little bit more, but we'll keep it simple. The term title, the slug, and the description, and that's all you could have, right? And now that we have term meta, you can essentially associate arbitrary data with terms, whereas before you couldn't. So an example of that, the example I like to cite a lot is setting a featured image for a category, right?
Which is actually something that a lot of people have been wanting to do in WordPress for years, is me being able to assign a default category or default image to a category. And I even wanted this at one time a few years ago, and just all the plugins that were out there that would allow you to do this, it was a zero hack job.
Well, and it's because they had to use the existing fields that they had at their disposal. So like what they would do is serialize the data and then put it in the description field or something, right? Or use other custom tables or something to store that data and then cross-reference it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can just store it with the term. So sort of a mutation of that example I just gave would be, and this came from Pippin Williamson, was like on WP Tavern, let's say, you tag posts with people's names, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have a lot of posts about, and now the dogs are barking. Let's say
the dogs are even excited about taxonomy meta.
Let's say you had posts that were tagged for Justin Tadlock, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could associate Justin Tadlock's picture with the Justin Tadlock tag. So if people wanted to view all the posts about a certain person, they could go to the archive, let's say the tag archive for that person.
Okay.
And they could see, let's say, Justin Tadlock's picture, or a description about him, or maybe some background information, and maybe some related plugins that he's written. And you could do all that with term meta.
I got you. Okay. Well, in that sense, then I can see why it would be a benefit for users. And then, since you don't have to do all these hack jobs, I guess is what developers had to do prior to eventually in 4.4, it makes developers' lives a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it does. Honestly, I think I described it this way before, but it's sort of like, I think Justin Tadlock was instrumental in sort of flipping the switch in people's minds in terms of interesting ways and that they could use custom taxonomies and custom post types. This is around 2.9 and 3.0. And I think when the switch flips for people on term meta, I think we're going to really see some cool stuff come out of that.
Yeah, because it only took me like 3 years to learn what the heck a custom post type was.
Well, that was the problem. Is it's like, well, what would I ever need a custom post type for, or what would I ever need a custom taxonomy for? But now, I can't imagine living without them. So I think it's going to be really cool to see how people can bend that to do interesting things.
And it's so great for developers' lives are going to get easier. It's going to benefit end users, but I think it can't be understated how much work and effort by Boone Gorgeous and a lot of other people went into having this taxonomy term meta in WordPress. And so, I mean, a lot of work when it was involved with this, so it's pretty cool to finally see it's going to see the light of day now.
Yeah, and Jeff, the thing that you said you took 3 years to learn custom post types. Part of that has to do with the people who I think developed custom post types maybe have, I don't know, maybe did a weird job of explaining it in terms of what it can do, because I went through even a couple of videos and I'm still like, what? But I think, as Drew mentioned, there's a lot in his example. That's a great example that you can stack all kinds of stuff based on the context of your content. And I can only imagine, like, if you are a regular blogger and you, let's just say, talk about food or something like that, I'm sure that you could use that to do unbelievable amounts of tie-ins. And Drew, does it also tie in like to people's feeds? Like, if you like maybe in a tooltip environment, would it be able to pull that up and then say, oh, here's his latest Pinterest pin, and here's his last Instagram picture.
That's what I'm saying. You could extend your feeds to use it. Absolutely.
Wow.
It's like, well, and that's the problem is right now we don't really have a good handle on how people are going to use it. And honestly, I'm not necessarily sure it's going to be advertised as using term meta, for instance, right? It's just going to be like somebody's going to come out with some insane plugin, and everyone's going to be like, "This is amazing," and then you go, "Oh wait, it uses term meta. That's sweet."
Well, I'm wondering what's going to happen when the affiliates get their hands on this kind of power and then finally understand it. I mean, you could almost ingest an entire products catalog and put in all the term meta and rule the SERPs based on the volume that you have.
Well, and the interesting thing is that it's sort of been well known in development circles that using post meta in querying, like meta queries, are typically not very efficient, right? And they're not very performant. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see, because for a long time terms were sort of viewed as the alternative to using post meta. You just had to sort of bend your mind around how you would make it work in a term environment. So now that we have term meta, I wonder if we're going to sort of kill that. I think we're going to have to wait and see how it goes, but I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it just from the aspect of, what does it do from a marketing perspective in terms of what you can display and how you can display it, and maybe especially in the popover and the tooltip style where you can really call that up without having to go to another page. I think that would be
well, and like I said, that's really what it's going to be interesting, because I think it's going to end up kind of being a under the hood kind of thing. I don't think you're going to necessarily see it advertised as using term meta. I think you're just going to see some really cool flexible plugins that you wonder how you ever lived without them coming out.
Yeah.
And that's how, in large part, I think we're going to see the REST API implemented. Is we're going to see some really cool stuff that doesn't look anything like WordPress, but can interact with it or do some amazing things with WordPress. Yep. And then we're going to be wondering, wow, how does this work? Oh, the REST API, sweet. Just like you said.
Yeah, the first people that take advantage of the REST API and of taxonomy meta and put something together and put it on Theme Forest, you're going to make a ton.
It's going to be, honestly, it's a really exciting time to be in WordPress. We're building a lot of really cool things right now. And it's not to say that we haven't been. I think right now we're getting to a point now where we're innovating, with stuff like this REST API or with term meta that are really going to push WordPress into new, push the boundaries. It's really going to be an interesting next year or so. I think you're going to see a lot of innovation happening.
So speaking of innovation and sort of sticking to the techie stuff, the company you're employed with, 10up, announced that they have made some major investments to WordPress. They've made some investments to WordPress before, but now they're continuing to reinvest into the WordPress project, and they're already sponsoring Helen Husandi to work full time on WordPress, and she actually led the release of WordPress 4.0, I believe.
Yep.
Yes, I got it. And now they're actually going to be sponsoring you full time to work on WordPress. So tell me how did that come about, and what will you be doing full time with WordPress?
Well, so I've actually been actually from the very start when I joined 10up 2.5 years ago. I've been contributing to WordPress. They've been donating time. Initially, it started around 25% of my time was donated. And, 25-75 to client work. And over time, I just, in some cases, lobbied, and in some cases, was rewarded with more time. For like the last year or so, they were donating about half of my time. And when we talk about my time, what does that mean, right? It means I'm active as a core committer, as somebody working on the docs team, working on the meta team, working on the support team. And so the projects that I work on typically span one or many of those teams, right? So now that I'm, cleared for 100%, that just means I can do twice as much of the work that I was doing before, which is awesome. Because there's honestly, in these specific projects, there's an endless amount of work to be done.
Yeah, and I got to say, just from someone who covers the WordPress space, and it's my part of my living to write about everything that's going on. You miss a week of WordPress stuff, like if you don't pay attention to all the various make blogs that are out there, it's you end up getting behind very fast. I mean, there's a bunch of different teams now working on a number of projects, and it's just kind of cool. I mean, like the taxonomy term meta, that was sort of a project, and the REST API, that's been at least a 3-year long project, or 2 to 3 year long project that we're starting to see the fruits of all the contributors' labors added to possibly WordPress 4.4, at least the first part of it. So there's just all kinds of crazy projects going on to help improve WordPress, and it's just cool to how at some point they reach that stage where, okay, it's ready, ship it into WordPress.
Well, and it's interesting with like Boone Gerges. He was working so, he's sort of like the shepherd of the term splitting, or the term roadmap, right? Like
taxonomy roadmap.
Taxonomy roadmap, right? But he's also like, we were talking earlier about all the insane progress we've already made in 4.4. Like, he and Scott Taylor have been hitting comments hard, like in a big way, clearing comments more efficient, trying to fix really old bugs, and all kinds of under the hood things that really make that run a lot better. But the problem is that most of it's under the hood, so pretty much the only people that are cheering there are developers. But realistically, there's some stuff in there that really will, I think, impact users in a big way, positively in a big way.
And one of the other investments that 10up has provided is they are going to sponsor, or they are sponsoring, 100 hours, company hours of.
Yeah.
For Scott Kingsley Clark, that we know of the PODS framework, and he's going to spend that company time to work on the Fields API project, which was initially announced in May and is sort of an offshoot of the Metadata API project. So can you kind of give us, again, an on-the-surface explanation as to the Fields API project and why, again, a lot of developers will love to see this included in core?
Well, the gist of the Fields API is that we're essentially rewriting the under the hood part of saving metadata in WordPress, right? And it's sort of standardizing it so that you can add these, let's say, fields to user data or settings data or customizer data or whatever kind of data you can think of. Right? It's sort of standardizing how data is saved in WordPress so that it can be much easier. So extending it will be a lot easier.
So just for a rudimentary example, I have the user profile screen in WordPress, and I already have these fields where I can add, I don't know, Facebook or Google Plus or whatever is already there. I mean, this API would make it a lot easier to add additional fields to that user profile screen.
Right. Essentially, it's that. It's not that we're changing the the way you save your user data. It's that we changed how it's saved under the hood, right? So that another plugin can come along and add another field, and it's not like, now where you sort of have to shove some HTML in the form, and then you have to handle the data. Like the point is just to standardize how WordPress interacts with data, with metadata.
So overall, I think this is just a great thing that 10up continues to do, reinvesting in WordPress. And Jake Goldman has been, he hasn't been shy in saying and explaining why it is his company or 10up continues to invest and reinvest in WordPress. And I think it only makes sense for companies whose businesses rely on open source software, that somehow, some way they reinvest that time, energy, or even money back into those projects, or else they can disappear. And one of the points that Helen nailed in the post on the 10up blog is that most of the web nowadays is built on open platforms, open technologies, but yet they're maintained by a very small core group of people dedicated to the problems that those software solves. And this is just one way of helping to keep that software afloat and keeping those people maintaining that software, because it would suck to just have it all disappear because they just run out of funds, time, energy, or what have you.
Well, the interesting thing is I really like that quote that from Jake that she put in that post, because I think it really comes close to how I feel about open source and how I feel about that we should give our time back to the platforms that give our businesses life, realistically, right? And that was honestly that sort of mantra is what made me want to join 10up in the first place.
So let me ask this, Drew. From a business perspective, let's talk about 10up for a sec. So with your endeavors, doing all of this work, contributing and the like, are there things that strategically you can come back to the folks and the other devs at 10up and say, I was looking at a problem and, maybe you solved it or maybe you didn't, doesn't make a difference in this theory, but where you may have been enlightened with something that may have been a customer problem in the past for 10up, and you can use that knowledge to
This happens all the time.
sort as profit from it, right? Yeah?
It happens all the time.
So that's a side benefit, really, of the contribution cycle, is that the company then gets to kind of get these secrets, whether they get used in core or not.
They're not necessarily secrets. I think it's more coming into a better understanding of how the platform works, right?
Right.
I think part of my responsibilities are to bring back notable news about what's going on in core, because it affects or will have an effect on everyone, because every project and every team in the company. It's, I'm getting ready to write up a post about all the things that are being merged in 4.4.
Mm-hmm.
When there was a bug in 4.3 with term splitting, it was really important for us to get the message out, because in a way, some of the other developers at 10up don't have time to be paying attention to what's going on in core.
Right.
So it's really, in a lot of ways, it's working as a messenger to sort of bring news of core back to 10up. But it's, I think it's also gives us an opportunity to sort of feel a sense of ownership over contributing to WordPress.
Mm-hmm. Because that's in it, from a business perspective, and I always take everything from a business perspective, but it seems to me like that would be if you've got a really good developer on your team and you'd like to really stay at the source and the pulse of what's going on within core. That seems like just such a logical choice to send one of your people to be a contributor full time.
Well, yeah, and I think part of it too is that I've always had a very focused sort of plan toward documentation in WordPress, which is, let's face it, not exactly the sexiest part of any project, right? And honestly, I've always been really glad that 10up is so supportive of the projects that I work on, and like documentation or working on the developer hub or sort of the lesser common areas of contributing to WordPress. Yes, I'm a core commander. Yes, I work on the core development team, but at the same time, I work on a lot of other things, and I've always enjoyed that 10up embraces that.
Yeah, and if someone says, well, where's the return on investment? Why we could be using they could be using Drew. 10up could be using Drew for major projects or websites or things that 10up is working on internally. So where's the return on investment of you working on documentation or the less sort of sexy parts of the WordPress project? And the return on investment is WordPress gets better. You're making WordPress better. The product that their business ultimately relies on is getting better,
That's
and
right.
that's where the ROI is.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of and a lot of people ask about how can a company afford to do this, and it really comes down to basic business. It's you figure out how much money you have at the end of the day and whether it's worth it to you to invest it in something like contributing back to the platform that your company relies on, right? I think it's just, and if you want to know more about that, I talked to Jake, but I think realistically, it's just it's sort of a necessary part of the community we live in. We rely on open web technologies, so it just makes sense for us to give back to those open web technologies.
So one of the last things I want to talk to you about tonight before we wrap it up here, and something that sort of hits close to home for me, is you wrote a post on your personal website, words, words,
Right.
sort of a funny domain name there. But you asked a question. It was about the word press, and meaning where is the press that writes about what's going on about the WordPress project, and you sort of highlighted the fact that these sites have come and gone. Whether it's individuals or a group effort to writing about WordPress, where are they? How do we get the word out? And it sort of hit close. It hits home for me because when I initially got involved with writing about WordPress back in 2009 and throughout the next, I'd say, 3 or 4 years after that, there were a lot of people who would write about upcoming features in WordPress and publish their opinions and their thoughts and maybe ways that maybe WordPress could be doing something better, or their thoughts and opinions on certain track tickets. And I don't see a lot of that anymore these days. I don't see
Oh, come
people
on.
writing.
Come
What?
on.
What are you talking about?
Menus in the customizer.
Yeah,
Come on.
okay, yeah. Well,
That's
that was a
the legal
lightning rod. That
polarizing
doesn't
issue.
count.
I don't think that I agree, Jeff. I think we used to see a lot more public commentary going on. I think maybe that's lessened a little bit because we have this sort of centralized make network now, whereas before we didn't have that, right? We didn't really have a central place to talk amongst the contributor teams, so I think a lot of the views get shared internally within the team. But I think it would be pretty neat, actually, to see the resurgence of that, to see a resurgence of people sharing personal opinions on these things.
A great example is Matt Cromley, I believe his name is. He does Word Impress, and he actually published a post today, I believe. It was either today or yesterday, where he highlights the fact that he believes the OEmbed API that's being merged into WordPress 4.4, which will allow people to OEmbed posts from other WordPress sites and it'll look beautiful, will sort of rejuvenate the social of WordPress and be able to easily share content across the web. And that's a feature that's going to be coming in WordPress 4.4. But those are the types of posts I miss reading. Is somebody saying, "Hey, look what's coming down the pike. This is what I think about it. This is where I think it could be improved, or this is where I think we should change direction." Posts like that is what I'd love to read more about, and I just don't see too much of that anymore.
Well, I think one area of that too is you see a lot of sort of recap posts, or toward the end of a release, you'll see a lot of this is what's coming in 4.4 posts, right?
I believe
I
those are
agree
called the
with
dev notes.
Well, you'll see that on the Make Network, the official blog, sure.
Right.
But I'm talking about like on a lot of other WordPress sites or whatever sites, you'll see these roundups, right? Of these are all the things that are coming in 4.4. I'm with you. I think I'd like to see them tackle one thing and say, this is what I like or don't like about this. This is what could be improved in a future version. But really just dive deep into one area or two areas instead of trying to recap the whole thing.
Well, is there a way, and this is just me throwing ideas out there again, but is there a way that we can get a little more Apple in terms of when a release is coming? I mean, you see these Apple events, they just show their minuscule improvements that they've got over their existing stuff.
You want us to hide what we're about to...
I don't want you to hide, but I mean,
but wait, there's
nice?
one more thing.
Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't that be nice if Matt, just got on? It doesn't even matter if it's a Google Hangout. We're just sharing screens or whatever. But, when we get a new release, we get this video that's like 2 minutes long with this cutesy little theme song in the underbed, and it shows some of the features. But, man, I'd love to get it where it's more of that style, where you get the contributors and they come on and they talk about the features that they worked on and what it can do.
That would be amazing. I would like to draft you to produce that for free.
Dude, done. I'll do it. If I can change the way that people perceive new releases, I'm all in.
Well, I don't think there's necessarily a perception problem. I think it's,
Well, if they don't know what the hell's coming out or what it does or how to practically use it.
I think everyone should just be surprised. They should just update and then just be surprised.
Yeah.
Look at all these amazing new features I didn't know anything about.
Yeah, and won't because nobody's really showing me real-world examples with it.
Well, honestly, I just found out today that I'm speaking at WordCamp Portland in a couple weeks, and I'm talking about beta testing. I'm actually specifically talking about how to beta test WordPress, and it's part of one of these. It's this like little side project that I've been working on, like trying to lower the barrier so people can test WordPress, right? Right now they can install the beta tester plugin or whatever, but a lot of people don't want to do that because you're essentially taking your live site and making it into a development version of WordPress, which is maybe not something you want to necessarily do on a production site, right? So this little side project that I've been working on with Scott Riley and some other people is to sort of completely lower the barrier. So that instead of having to read these roundup posts that say, here's all the things that are coming in 4.4, you can literally just go try it. And then you can tell us what you think, right?
Oh, that would be very cool.
Because honestly, a lot of people have, this feeling like, well, they put this feature in here, but I really have an opinion about this. And coming from a core team perspective, I think I would have preferred to hear the opinion before we shipped it, So I think it'll be an interesting experiment to see if we can get beta in the hands of more people so that they can have more ownership over the conversation.
So can we do beta installs? Just, hey, log in, register, just like WordPress.com, and here's the beta. It's already installed.
Well, that's kind of what this is, but it's even simpler. It's like you visit the site and you're logged into the admin without doing it.
Okay. Is this like one of those demo sites of themes where everybody else leaves spam and junk in there, or?
Well, it's kind of like that. I mean, I think in some ways it might be kind of like that. It'll be pretty locked down. Obviously, you won't be able to install plugins and themes and stuff. You'll just get a chance to interact with beta WordPress or whatever. But I think it'll be maybe a little more polished over time. For now, I have 2 weeks to make it work, right? So,
well, you're working on WordPress full time. Get on it, man.
Yeah. Talking to us.
Honestly, I consider this to be part of the work I'm doing. It's attempting to lower the barrier to get beta in the hands of more people. Because realistically, I think people would be a lot more excited about releases if they literally knew what was coming, right? Oh, I went to this site and I tried it out and it was awesome. Or, oh, I went to the site and I tried it out and I think that this, or this could be improved. I'd like to see a lot more of that before we ship, right? Because it seems like in a lot of cases we'll ship a new release and people feel blindsided.
And that's when you get the feedback you wish you had.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think not necessarily all feedback ever is constructive, right? But I think in a lot of cases we're missing an opportunity, and I'd like to see if we could maybe recoup some of that on the front end instead of the back.
And in terms of the press dealing with WordPress, me and Sarah and I do a great job on the tavern. It's reached a point where, and I know some other websites do this as well, but you have the posts that come out on the make blogs, and they're developer centric, and I understand that. I think they should be. I think they should be addressed to the developers for WordPress. And I've sort of, it's the tavern sort of responsibility to take the information that's presented by the core committers and the developers and the project maintainers through the make blogs and decipher that and sort of rewrite some parts of it and regurgitate that information in a way that many other people can understand, which is the wider audience, the wider user base
Sure.
that the tavern has access to. And I would like to see, and I know writing about WordPress and the core happenings is not money-making content. I understand that, but it would be cool to see some other websites out there try and tackle this issue of deciphering whatever is published on the make blogs and making it into user readable content that people can say, oh yeah, I have a good idea and understanding of what's going on without having to read the make blog posts. That's sort of what we're trying to do in the tavern. That's what I'm trying to do, and hopefully maybe some of these other WordPress news sites can also sort of get in the groove with doing that. I would just like to see more players in this space do that.
Well, realistically, I think one area that personally I would like to see an improvement is, the about page, right? So we do the about page for every release, and then we take some of the about page stuff and put it in the version article in the codex. And I think personally, I'd like to see the about page get done sooner, right? I think right now it gets done, that we do hard string freeze right after the about page gets done, and that's usually like, a week or 2 weeks before release. I think I'd like to see that happen earlier, because that really is a distillation of what you're talking about. The about page lives for the wider user base. It's not really for developers. There's a tiny little section at the bottom for under the hood, usually.
Yeah, and it needs it, because I'll tell you what, I still know people that are, coders and all that, who hate WordPress for whatever reason. And we need that kind of, I guess, rebuttal from a technical standpoint in terms of what it's like to hard code things or use Ruby or whatever the hell they're going to use versus our environment. And that is especially true once the taxonomy stuff comes out, once REST API is fully integrated. We need that kind of case study and time trials, specifications, whatever it happens to be.
I think the thing is we have the people in the community who can do these things already, right? We just have to inspire them to do these things. I feel like it goes back to the point about wanting to see more opinions about core features or whatever is going on. I mean, obviously, the problem with that is that it requires that these people are paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, it's paying attention can be and is a full-time job.
Yes, it is.
It is literally my job to pay attention to what's going on as part of what I do. And so, for me, that seems like second nature. But for a lot of people, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to pay attention to what's going on in WordPress. Not just current WordPress, but what's coming next, right?
I mean, I'm not being selfish when I say this. I hope nobody sees it as being selfish. But I mean, if you take WP Tavern out of the mix and some of these other WordPress sites out of the mix, and you're just left with the Make Core blog posts, which are good on their own, you would have a lot of people who have no clue as to what's going on in WordPress, what to expect, things that have been taken away, things that have been added, and you'd end up with a lot of surprise and probably angry people when they upgrade. Update to a major version of WordPress, and things just all kinds of things look different, or they don't know any of the new things to try without the about page. Of course, that would tell them. But
I think the tavern and other sites serve an important purpose as a buffer, right?
Like a liaison, sort of.
I mean, because in a lot of cases we are speaking development speak on the make, the core P2, right? We're speaking developer speak because our subscribers are developers and whatever. I think the service that the tavern and other sites perform is immensely valuable to create that distillation, because you need to have some way to break it out into more straightforward terms. This is what's coming. What do you think about that? Right?
Yeah, you know what? You would have a great WordPress blog or podcast if you just did something like Future Press, and all you talked about was stuff that's coming out that's not even out yet.
I'm taking your idea now. I'm going to go start a site and crush the tavern.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, good luck with that. And guess what? Take all the core committer hate that the tavern gets sometimes. You can keep.
Hey now. We don't hate the tavern.
Well,
I think you are delusional, my friend.
We have both Sarah and I, over the course of the last 2 years, based on things we have written about what's going on WordPress, have received. Sometimes the core committers or developers or people who are involved with a certain project that we write about are not happy with the way we've covered a certain subject, either because of the wording or maybe we missed a fact or two. But hey, we're the press.
I think that's inevitable. I think you are the WordPress.
That's right.
You are, and that is not to say you are the enemy. You are just the WordPress, and that is, I think, people are not necessarily always going to be happy with your coverage.
I'm the messenger. Don't shoot me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an opportunity for growth in that area. I think we'll be, I think they're never really. Nobody. What's the saying? You can't keep everybody happy all the time.
That's right.
I think. The stuff that you print on the tavern is important for the wider community, because I think in a lot of cases the core team has a very focused vision on what is going on, from a development perspective. So I think it comes all back to the buffer thing, that the tavern serves as a valuable buffer for what's going on. And, you have a really good handle on what is important to your readership, who I think constitute a wider margin of the user base than, like, say, the subscribership of the core P2.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
It was a compliment.
Oh, yes. But yeah, and plus the coverage and the conversations that take place on the tavern about all this stuff that's happening in the world WordPress ecosystem has sometimes led to track tickets. I've gotten some people motivated to create patches. I even created one time to fix a typo. That was pretty cool. And there's been some pretty awesome things that have come out of our coverage of certain topics on the tavern. So I'm pretty proud of that.
I think it's inevitable. I think you're reaching a wider demographic of people, and it's nice to have the feedback. Honestly, it's nice to have
the constructive feedback.
Well, it's nice to have those people involved in the process. Honestly, I'm a lot more likely to take someone seriously if they are taking ownership of their opinion, and they're taking ownership of, sort of the process of being the change that they want. Right.
Right.
It's you can be the change that you want even if you aren't a developer. It's just sort of being willing to throw ego out the window and say, we're all here to make WordPress better, let's make WordPress better.
I agree. So with that, before we wrap it up here with our interview, Marcus, any other questions you'd like to ask Drew before we let him get back to work on WordPress?
Nope, I'm actually picking out my black turtleneck right now for my big unveiling of my keynote when I can present all of them. Oh, I'm just.
No. I said you could produce it, but you can't.
Oh. Darn it.
Oh man, awesome. So, Drew, thanks a lot for being on the show once again. Again, you are a friend of the show officially now. Of course, awesome. You kind of were already, but I'll give you the title now on the show just so we're on the record. But before we let you go, Obviously, you said you're going to be at WordCamp Portland. Any other WordPress events that you're going to be speaking at or attending between now and December?
I don't think so. I'm a little traveled out. I mean, after WordCamp
What about
Europe.
WordCamp US, man?
Well, I mean, that's in December. That you said between now and December. Nothing between now and December other than WordCamp Portland, and then WordCamp US. So
Between now and December 10th. Is that better?
there you go. Between now and WordCamp Portland and WordCamp US. But yeah, I'm pretty traveled out. I think 6 or 7 weekends in a row at airports was enough. I think it's time to chill out for a little bit.
They should have some sort of a frequent travelers WordCamp award.
Yeah, that'd be okay.
Log where the home base is for somebody, and then where the other WordCamps that they go to.
Yeah, like a gold-plated petri dish would be your award for traveling on a plane that much.
Yeah.
All right, so Drew, how can people stay in touch with you, get in touch, or figure out what's going on in your world via Twitter, Facebook, or whatever? Keep in touch.
Well, my handle almost everywhere is Drew a Picture.
All one word.
That's right, Drew a Picture, one word. On Slack, it's just Drew. And yeah, if you're interested in contributing to WordPress, ping me on Slack.
Awesome. If they have a question about in any way, shape, or form on how to contribute to WordPress, they can just ping you.
And if you're interested in working at a really cool company, 10up is hiring.
Oh, geez, yeah. Boy, I could have guessed that with my eyes closed.
And that, by the way, that offer to contribute is no joke, man. If you're young and or old, doesn't matter. But if you're just getting into coding and things, and you want to really get something really awesome for your resume and for your experience, that's it. I mean, you can't get it any better than that.
Well, and it's not just core contributing. Obviously, I focus on core and documentation contributing and all those sorts of things. But there are I think we have 15 contributor teams now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in taking part in the WordPress process, there is something for you.
There is something for everyone.
Honestly, the best way to get started is go to make.wordpress.org.
And just start reading.
That's right.
And also look at the handbook.
That's right.
There's a core contributor handbook link on that Make Core website, isn't there?
Yeah, there's one on make.wordpress.org/core/handbook, actually.
Aha, there we go. And I will link to that in the show notes. And that is a great read. That'll give you a good head start before you ping Drew.
That's right.
Awesome. Drew, thanks a lot. Thanks again for being on the show, giving us some of your time. And we'll have you back on in a few months to sort of give us an update on everything you're working on.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Take care. So that was Drew Pitcher. And I always enjoy having him on the show just to talk about WordPress. And again, I think one of the cool things about Drew, and it's one of the first times this happened, is when he was leading the release of WordPress 4.2. He kept me in the loop. He's the first core committer to actually ping me on a somewhat regular basis and say, hey, these are some changes we made in core. I wanted you to be aware of them. And it was really nice to have that kind of connection. And so far, it hasn't translated into other core committers, but that's okay. But I just wanted to highlight that he's a great guy, great committer. Glad to have him contributing to the WordPress project, and it's pretty damn awesome now that he's going to be working on the project full time, thanks to 10up, and thanks to 10up for doing that.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, that's a wise thing to do from a business perspective, and certainly a great thing for us to benefit from as users.
So I do want to get through a couple of stories here. We'll see if we can do a lightning round because we're already past an hour here. But I wanted to start off by saying happy birthday to Sean Hesketh, also a friend of the show. He is the founder of WP 101, really cool video tutorial videos that explain to people how to use WordPress. The company turned 7 years old.
Wow.
So that's pretty awesome. In fact, back when he founded WP 101, back in 2008, that was around the same time where companies like iThemes launched, Studio Press, Woo Themes, some of the big-time theme shops that opened their doors back then. He's been around the same time as them, so it's great to see him part of that sort of veteran status level of companies that have sort of taken off since 2008 in the WordPress space. So congrats, Sean, and here's to another 7 years, buddy.
Yeah, cheers, man. Good job.
And Google, or not Google, GoDaddy, big difference, has launched a pretty cool section of their website called the Hot 100, or the WordPress Hot 100. So what this is it started out as an idea at Pressnomics earlier last year when I was talking to Christopher Carfey and a few of the other gentlemen there. Mendel was also at the table, and a few other gentlemen.
Probably Kurt, yeah.
And Kurt Payne,
Yep.
he was also there. And we were just sitting there at the brewery, and I said to them, I said, hey, you know what would be cool if somehow you could take, because you guys are hosting so many customers, it would be cool if you could aggregate the data of all the plugins and themes that they're using and create like a billboard chart and open that up to the public so we could see what the most popular themes and plugins are across your network. And they said, I saw the light bulbs all turn on all over their heads. And it's been about 9 months or so, but they've turned the idea into a reality. And I think it looks pretty cool. So every week, it looks just like the Billboard Top 100 chart, so you could see their rankings, what they were last week, if they've gone up or down in the list, and the links. Each plugin has a link, and it points to, I believe, either the plugin URL or the theme URL that's configured on their WordPress.org plugin page. And there's some pretty interesting data in here, and it changes every week. So there is some feedback we've received when I wrote about it on the Tavern about whether they should expand that out to maybe be monthly or somehow manipulate the data so that you can more easily track trends. But for now, it's just a pretty cool glimpse into the popular themes and plugins that are being installed on WordPress across the whole GoDaddy network. Marcus, did you get a chance to look at the site, and what do you think?
I did look at the site. I love the way that they display it. I'm very disappointed in the GoDaddy users because those plugins are terrible.
Which ones? The top 10, the top 15, the 20, or what?
Oh, I just perused them. I'm like, who would install this? Old stuff. It's just your basic rummage sale once you get past 30 on the list.
So, I mean, come on, Slider Revolution. Come on, that's an awesome plugin.
No, I agree. Yeah, when it's being hacked. Yeah.
Oh, boy. But at the very least, it gives you insight, and it gives some of these plugin authors insight, if they're on this list, that at the very least, because WordPress.org tells you a rough estimate of the total number of installs, but it doesn't tell you where those installs are. And I think if you're one of the plugin authors that can correlate to, I don't know, I guess in a way, because it changes every week, so maybe you can't really correlate it to GoDaddy at all versus what, track your installs on .org versus what you're seeing going on GoDaddy. I don't know if you can make the connection there, but I don't know. Overall, I just think it's a great insight into what's going on, and I imagine over time they're going to make some changes to the way they either save the data or they present the data, because it would be nice to track trends over time, with cool-looking charts and stuff.
Yeah, well, I wonder if there's going to be a Casey Kasem counting down the hits every week.
Hey, that sounds like a perfect job for you. A new plugin show for you, the GoDaddy Hot 100.
Yeah, that's right. No break in that one. No tunes at all. Jeez.
So the last story I want to talk to you before we get to this week's. Oh, geez. I gotta do my comment plugins, don't I? All right, I'm gonna skip that story. I want to talk about. Last week I talked about how I was gonna share all the plugins I'm using to take comments to the next level. So I'm gonna start with the problem solvers, the ones that actually solve specific problems I highlighted in last week's show. Now, Marcus, you had mentioned a plugin. I believe, was it called Lynch Mob or something?
Yeah. That I wanted, yes.
Yeah, to allow people to help moderate comments. Well, it's called Crowd Control, and it's by the people at Post-O-Matic. And what it does is when you turn it on, it gives you a threshold that you can set where you can, based on that number, which is a number of reports, Once that number of reports is hit, it would actually send the comment automatically into moderation and notify the site administrator. So what it does is it actually adds a little report button to your comment, and when you hover over it, you can click the report button, and once you get to whatever your threshold hits, it'll automatically go into moderation. Now, I've got this level set pretty high because I've already noticed, and some people have reported on the tavern, that they've mistakenly hit the report button just to see what it does. So, thankfully, I don't have the threshold hit very low. But one of the cool things about this is when it does go into moderation, the site administrator has the last say. So if you, as a site administrator, truly believe that this comment doesn't violate any of your guidelines or whatsoever, and you approve it, it will not go back into moderation no matter how many more reports that it gets. So just a pretty cool plugin that solves the problem of allowing me to be able to turn comment moderation off and get some of the loyal readership to help out in terms of the moderation abilities.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a good idea then. I still think it's a good idea now.
So the next one is Show Parent Comment, and this was actually a plugin created by Steven Cronin, who works over there at Envato. Pretty cool dude. And this is nice because I mentioned how you can't see the context of the conversation when somebody replies to a comment when you're moderating them in the back end. Well, this plugin has a nice UI. It looks like it blends right into WordPress, and it shows the entire quote of the comment that the person is responding to so that you can see whether or not the reply is in context to the conversation. So this way it'll help you to determine whether it's just maybe a spammer who copied and pasted somebody else's reply, and that's what, you might not be able to see if that's spam or not. Well, this will help out with that. Now, the cool thing about this is there's already a ticket created in WordPress track to try and get this feature added to core, because ultimately I think this is something that is needed, because right now it's just very difficult without having to load the page and actually view the conversation there to understand the context of what's going on in the conversation. So it's called Show Parent Comment, and that's in my list of problem solvers.
Yeah, and that's only been out a month, so your timing couldn't be more perfect.
And as far as enhancements to native comments goes, Epic, of course, that's another one, another plugin created by the Postmatic guys, and it just gives a lot of cool visual enhancements to the comment form. And it also provides front-end moderation, so if you are one of those people, site administrators, who likes to administer things from the front end, you can do that. You could send the comment to trash or spam, or actually approve comments and see them show up right there because it has Ajax built in. So that's one of my favorite features of Epic, is actually it adds Ajax to the comment form, so comments just show up right there without having to refresh the entire page. Just a lot of cool stuff it adds to the native WordPress comment form, and I think that's a big deal, is that it's native. It's not relying on a service. It just enhances what's already there. So it's called Epic. And, of course, we're going to have on the guys from Postmatic on at some point in the future to just cover commenting, because we didn't get a chance to do it when they were on the previous show. But the next one is Basic Comment Quick Tags, and this is really cool. It actually adds buttons to your comment form. So instead of readers having to remember HTML code, they can just click the buttons for bold, italicized, URLs, or quotes, and it automatically puts the HTML tags in the comment form. So I think this is a much friendlier user experience to styling and formatting your text or their text versus not having anything there at all and having to remember or copy and paste HTML codes to format text within the comment form. And the coolest thing about this is it's that Quick Tags is actually a native feature in WordPress. This this plugin actually just exposes those Quick Tags into the comment form.
Right. It's not quite like the text editor within your post editor in WordPress, text versus visual, but it just gives a few buttons in which they can deposit specific types of typeface or whatever. So it's pretty cool. I wonder also if there's other embed stuff that can be done with this kind of thing too, videos and all that stuff.
Oh, where somebody links to something, and just the Owen bet
Yeah.
shows up right in the comment form?
Right, like a video or something like that.
Hmm. I'm not sure. I haven't tried that. I don't know if
Hmm.
OEmbed is allowed on the comment form or not natively in WordPress. I will have to look into that and report back.
Yeah. Okay.
So the next one on my list is Simple Comment Editing by Ronald Hurica. I've been a fan of this plugin for a long time, for years, ever since he created it. But basically, what it does is it allows readers, by default, 5 minutes after they've submitted their comment to edit it. And then after the 5 minutes is up, that's it. You can't edit it no more.
Commenter's remorse.
Yeah, pretty much. I've actually been very gracious with tavern readers, and I've given them 15 minutes because what the hell? Because you only have 15 minutes to edit it, and I don't really want to go through and edit it if I don't have to. So ever since I've actually added simple comment editing to the tavern, the amount of contact form submissions and pings on Twitter to correct comments has gone down drastically, and a lot of the readers have said they appreciate being able to edit their comments within 5 to 15 minutes of submitting them to the tavern. So just a great lightweight way of giving your readers a chance to edit their comments, which I wish more sites would provide.
Yeah, what happens? Do they swear at you and then go, "Oh my God, I might need him to write up my plugin one day. I need to
So
edit
far,
that."
so far that hasn't happened yet. Uh, but yeah, so just a great plugin. And the last one on my list is Postmatic. And of course, if you want to learn everything about Postmatic, just listen to last week's episode, which was episode 208. So those are the plugins I've added to the tavern. Some of them solve some problems, some of them enhance the comment form, but right now I've got a pretty rockin' jammin' comment form on the tavern that in the future is going to improve because those guys over at Postmatic are just going bonkers. Uh, they're working really hard on improving Epic and adding different features to their various plugins. So great job, guys! And yeah, I mean that's right now I got a pretty nice comment form based. That to me is a whole lot user friendly and better than Jetpack comments.
You know, the one plugin that you don't have in this list that I'd love to see is like an award, the best comment. You know, they get a little trophy icon or something like that, and then maybe chalk them up every time they keep commenting. There's little stars underneath
Well,
their avatar.
wouldn't that have to be tied into some sort of comment rating system?
Well, and I'm just talking about if you're the administrator and you go, yeah,
Or it'd be like something that says editor's pick.
yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. Oh well.
I'd like to award little prizes though, little avatar stars and things like that. That would be fun.
Well, I will pass this information on to the Postmatic guys, and who knows, it might be there tomorrow. You know, I don't know the way these guys are working.
Yeah.
So that's the story on how I've enhanced the commenting form on the tavern. With that said, geez, if we haven't mentioned enough plugins already, how about 3 more, Marcus?
Well, it is becoming quite the plug-in show. This one isn't quite commenting. It's actually just more gestures than anything, but it does involve feedback from your users. It's called WP Like Dislike. It allows the visitors to either like or dislike the post of your website with just one click. So they can give you a thumbs up or thumbs down, plus or minus. Pretty nice. Next one, Slack notifications. It's a small little plugin that notifies you via the Slack API to whatever Slack channel you set up. If there's a new WordPress version, new WordPress plugin updates, if any posts have been published, new user registrations, new admin logins, things like that, it just puts a little post in Slack so that you or your whole crew can see what's going on.
I wonder if you could tie that into something like Stream, and then somehow get, sort of expand the things that you could be notified for, but instead of, everything being, everything's logged in Stream, but you could somehow configure certain actions to be Slack notifications. Right. I wonder if it'd probably be extensible like that.
Yeah, I've been using Slack a lot with the new crew that I'm working with, and it's pretty cool. I hadn't used it heavily, but now that I'm literally interacting 100 times a day on it, I find a lot of things are pretty neat. Some things are kind of missing. I'd love to be able to just do a VoIP call, a la Skype or Hangouts or whatever, right through Slack. That would be awesome, but not there yet. And finally, Jeff, you mentioned Postmatic, and our friend of the show, Jeff Matson, came out with a plugin called Postmatic for Gravity Forms. It's a plugin that allows people to subscribe to the Postmatic feed using Gravity Forms. So if you've got a contact form or something like that, and you want them to subscribe, you can just have a little checkbox. Yeah, I want to subscribe to the feed, and it adds them, connects right to Postmatic. So kudos to Jeff Matson, because I used Gravity Forms, and I think I'm going to get off of my MailChimp and start doing a lot more stuff with Postmatic, and we'll see how it goes. So thanks to our friend of the show and Friday night drinking buddy via Hangouts, Jeff Matson. And those are my plug-in picks of the week.
And speaking of Matson, I want to give him a shout out because he actually created that plugin in a matter of a couple of days. And I remember when he was writing about WordPress's history on a Joomla site, which was not of his choosing. He didn't have any choice in the matter in that instant. But since that day, since that time, where he's really become ingrained in the WordPress community, he's really learned a lot. I mean, he's learned about, he created that Heartbeat API plugin, which is a really cool plugin to control how the Heartbeat API acts in WordPress. And in fact, a lot of shared web hosting companies uses that to sort of put a limit on how the Heartbeat API works. But he's whipping up plugins. He's learning how to code, and he's just one of those guys that's excelling right now and learning how to manipulate and work with WordPress from a developer perspective. So I just wanted to give him a shout out, and good job on that plugin, man.
Yeah, you can follow him on Twitter at the Jeff Matson, Matson. And he's funny too, which is great.
Yes, he is. He's funny in more than one way. But we won't go there. Okay, so that does it for this week's edition of WordPress Weekly. We will not have an episode next week. Marcus is busy with plans, and I will be on a plane. I will be in Virginia Beach, actually, at Jeff Matson's house. So
this is not payment. This is not an Airbnb payment.
No, this is not an Airbnb. I will actually be there for a couple days, and I'll be at a hotel because the first ever WordCamp Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach is taking place. So it's the first one of its kind. It's going to be one of those small type family-run atmospheres, and I can't wait. Hopefully nothing's underwater down there. In fact, the last report I heard, it's drying up down there, so it should be a good time. But that's why we won't have a show. However, we will be back the following week on October 21st, and I'll give you a report on what happened at WordCamp and just reminisce about things, Marcus.
Awesome. Well, that gives me another night to work on my little coaching project that I'm on.
So everybody can find show notes for this episode and every other episode on WPTavern.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeffro. That's JEFFR0. And you, Marcus?
You can follow me at my website, marcuscouch.com, and on Twitter at marcuscouch.
And until next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Have a safe and enjoyable weekend this week, and then have a safe and enjoyable weekend next week while you're at it. And we'll talk to you again in about 2 weeks. So long, everybody.